The ICU at St. Germain Medical Center in Boston carried the same sterile chill every night. Machines beeped in steady rhythm, artificial lullabies echoing through the wide, dim corridors. Room 412 was no different, save for one detail. The woman in the bed had once been one of the most powerful tech executives in the United States. Her name was Caroline Wells, founder of Wells Tech, a billion-dollar tech firm that had revolutionized home AI systems. But for the past 6 months, she had been unresponsive, locked in a coma after a car crash on Route 9 during a rainstorm. There had been no witnesses, just a totaled Tesla, some minor bruising, and a city full of questions. Dr. Noah Mercer, 30, stood beside her bed, a frown etched deep between his brows. His white coat was wrinkled, hanging over a navy blue hoodie, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. He hadn't slept properly in days. As a hospitalist assigned to Caroline's case, he knew her charts by heart, had memorized every blip on her EKG, and still, something never sat right with him. Tonight, it was the bandages. He stared at the wrappings around her torso, old yellowing gauze stiff at the edges, bound too tightly across her chest. Her breathing was shallow, barely noticeable. Noah's fingers hovered above them, torn between protocol and instinct. "Dr. Mercer, what are you doing?" The sharp voice belonged to Janine Blake, the ICU's senior nurse, a woman known for her precision and love of rules. Noah didn't look up. "These bandages are restricting her diaphragm. She's barely getting air." Janine stepped closer, arms crossed. "Those were placed by the trauma team. You know there's a process. We log everything. We don't make unilateral changes." Noah's jaw tightened. "She's been lying here for half a year. Her family hasn't visited. No one's advocating for her. And if I wait for a committee to approve a bandage change, she might not be breathing at all in another week." He reached for a sterile kit. Janine's eyes widened. "Noah, stop. You'll jeopardize your license." He didn't answer. Instead, with gentle hands, he slid sterile scissors under the first strip and began to cut. The gauze peeled away slowly, revealing red, raw indentations, pressed deep into Caroline's pale skin. His breath caught in his throat. How long had she been suffering in silence beneath this bureaucracy? "Jesus," he muttered. Janine hovered beside him, silent now. She didn't protest again. Noah worked quickly, unwrapping the tight bands and replacing them with fresh, breathable gauze. His movements were deliberate, snug, but no longer restrictive. As he adjusted the final wrap, his fingers brushed her skin. It was a brief moment, barely a second, but a flicker of something unspoken passed between them. Silence settled into the room, deeper than before. Then came a sound Noah hadn't heard in 6 months, a change. The heart monitor skipped. A long beep stretched, then quickened. 60, 65, 70. Janine gasped. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a thud. Noah leaned in, pulse racing. Caroline's chest hitched, her lips parted, just slightly, but it was movement, the first in half a year. Noah's breath caught. "Come on," he whispered. "Come back." The monitor ticked steadily now, no longer the slow, even rhythm of a vegetative state. Her vitals were responding. Her body had felt him, felt the change. "Is this real?" Janine whispered. Noah stepped back, his eyes never leaving Caroline's face. "Something's different." She remained still, but her skin had warmed beneath his touch, and her breathing had eased. It wasn't a miracle, not yet, but it was something, a beginning. Janine crouched down to retrieve her clipboard, her expression shaken. "You'll have to answer for this." "I will," Noah said quietly, "but I won't apologize for doing what's right." He glanced at Caroline again, unsure whether she had heard any of it. But deep down, he felt it. A shift, a crack in the wall that had kept her trapped. He'd done the unthinkable. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Caroline Wells was changing. The next morning, Dr. Noah Mercer sat hunched over a cup of stale coffee in the dim hospital cafeteria. The sunlight streaming through the narrow windows felt almost insulting, bright and ordinary in contrast to what had happened the night before. He hadn't told anyone, not yet. Not about the heart monitor spike, not about the way Caroline Wells's chest had fluttered like a breath trying to break free. Most of all, he hadn't told anyone about the fear creeping in his chest. that someone didn't want her to wake up. The thought had started as a whisper, then turned into a steady drumbeat. He couldn't shake it. He pushed the coffee aside and opened her medical file on the hospital tablet. Again, for what must have been the 100th time. Vitals, blood work, CT scans, 6 months of data, and nothing ever explained why she hadn't regained consciousness. Her injuries had been relatively mild, a concussion, some bruised ribs, a broken wrist, but nothing severe enough to keep a healthy woman in her 30s comatose for half a year. The neurologist had labeled her case unexplained vegetative state. That sounded like a verdict, but it wasn't. It was an excuse. Noah's brow furrowed. What if it wasn't medical at all? He flipped to the log of her medications. Standard sedatives, antibiotics, fluids. Nothing stood out at first glance, but something odd nagged at him. The note said she was receiving minimal sedation, enough to prevent muscle spasms, not enough to suppress consciousness. Then why had her pupils dilated like someone coming off anesthesia the moment he changed her bandages? He stood abruptly, scraping back his chair. He had a hunch, and he was done ignoring it. Down in the supply room, tucked away behind rows of gauze and IV fluids, Noah searched every tray and shelf, eyes sharp, breath tight. He didn't know what exactly he was looking for until he found it. A small, clear vial, half filled with colorless liquid. It sat behind a sealed box of cotton swabs, completely unlabeled. His pulse jumped. It didn't belong there. No barcode, no hospital inventory sticker. Just glass and silence. Noah slipped it into his coat pocket and exited quickly, keeping his head low as he returned to his cramped office. He locked the door, heart hammering, and pulled out his phone. "Jake, I need a favor." The voice on the other end groaned. "Dude, it's Sunday. What kind of favor?" "Off the books. I need this analyzed, quietly." Jake was a lab tech, sharp, loyal, and one of Noah's few real friends in the hospital. After a pause, he replied, "You're serious." "Dead serious." "Bring it to the back entrance in 20. I'll figure something out." 2 days passed. Noah barely slept. He checked in on Caroline constantly, careful not to draw attention. She hadn't moved again since that night, but her vitals remained stronger than before. It was like something inside her was waiting, hiding. On the third morning, his phone buzzed while he was halfway through a patient report. "Jake." Noah stepped out into the stairwell and answered. "What did you find?" Jake sounded unusually quiet. "That vial? It's a low-dose anesthetic, the kind used in outpatient dental surgeries. Not enough to knock someone out, but enough to dull brain activity." Noah felt the bottom of his stomach drop. Could it be used to keep someone in a coma? If administered steadily over time? Yeah, definitely. Especially someone already vulnerable. Jake paused. "Noah, where did you get this?" Noah didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. After hanging up, he leaned against the cold metal railing, trying to slow his breathing. His instincts had been right. This wasn't just about negligence. Someone had deliberately kept Caroline under, drugged her without consent, without orders, without medical justification. But who and why? Her company, Wells Tech, had been left in the hands of her younger brother, Evan Wells, since the accident. Noah remembered the headlines vaguely. A polished golden boy with a Georgetown degree and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He'd held emergency power of attorney. Temporary, they said, and temporary had turned into 6 months. Noah returned to Caroline's room, his face carefully neutral as he stepped inside. She lay still, lips slightly parted, oxygen flowing gently into her nose. He sat beside her, pulled the small chair close, and leaned in. "I don't know if you can hear me," he whispered, voice low, "but someone's trying to keep you quiet, and I think I just found the first piece of proof." She didn't move, but that didn't matter. He wasn't waiting anymore. From now on, he would be her voice until she could speak again. "For the next 48 hours, doctor." Noah Mercer became two people. By day, he was the attentive hospitalist, tending to Caroline Wells's slow but steady recovery, checking vitals, adjusting meds, and gently encouraging the nurses to ease off unnecessary sedation. But by night, he was a man on a mission, digging through security footage, medication logs, visitor records, anything that could tie Evan Wells to the unmarked vial. And then one night he found it. The hospital's head of security, a weary man named Delaney, owed Noah a favor from a year ago when Noah had caught a misdiagnosed stroke on Delaney's wife during a routine checkup. When Noah asked for a quiet review of ICU hallway cameras from 6 months prior, Delaney hesitated, then nodded once. "I'll give you an hour," he said. But if anyone asks, this never happened. In the dark AV room, the grainy footage scrolled frame by frame. Noah leaned in, heart pounding. And then, there he was. Evan Wells, suited, smiling, his hand slipping a small vial to a nervous-looking nurse in pale blue scrubs. The nurse, glancing around furtively, pocketed the vial. Evan patted her shoulder like a boss sealing a shady deal. Timestamp, 3:17 a.m. 2 days before Caroline's condition inexplicably worsened. Noah paused the footage and stared at the screen. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was evidence. The nurse was Samantha Ortiz, one of the quietest in the ICU rotation. Noah had barely exchanged more than polite greetings with her, but now he had no choice. He printed a still image from the footage and slid it into a folder, along with Jake's toxicology report. Then he went looking for Samantha. He found her in the break room, stirring powdered creamer into a paper cup, eyes hollow from the night shift. "Hey, Sam," he said softly, folding into the seat beside her. She glanced up, startled. "Oh, Dr. Mercer. Everything okay?" He placed the folder gently on the table and opened it to the image. Her hand froze mid-stir. "You don't have to say anything," Noah said, "but I need to know the truth. Because this," he pointed to the screen grab, "this doesn't look like medicine, and Caroline Wells is still lying in that bed because of it." She stared at the image, color draining from her cheeks. The spoon clinked against the cup. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "He told me it was for her anxiety," she said. "Said it would help her rest and that the doctors had approved it off record. He gave me $5,000 and said it was just for a week. Just until the company board voted. I didn't think—" Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it would go on this long." Noah didn't move. He let the weight of silence do its work. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," he replied, "but now you have to help make it right." She nodded slowly, then glanced at the camera in the corner of the break room. "Do you have something to record me?" He did. The digital recorder in his coat pocket had been running since the conversation started. By the next morning, Noah had everything he needed: footage, a confession, lab results, timestamps. All wrapped neatly in a manila folder, now heavy in his hands as he made his way to the executive lounge on the hospital's top floor. Evan Wells was there, of course. He sat at the head of a long oak table, laughing with hospital board members, looking every bit the visionary corporate heir. Noah pushed the glass doors open, and the room fell silent. Heads turned. Evan's smile faltered for a split second. "Dr. Mercer," he said coolly. "To what do we owe this dramatic entrance?" Noah walked to the table and dropped the folder with a flat thud. "This," he said, his voice calm but clipped. "This is you drugging your sister into a coma so you could take over her company." Gasps rippled through the room. A few board members straightened. One woman covered her mouth. Evan leaned back, crossing his arms. "That's a hell of an accusation." "Not an accusation," Noah said. "It's evidence. Footage of you handing off the vial, a nurse's signed confession, a toxicology report. You gambled that no one would care enough to notice, but I did." "You're just a hospitalist," Evan said, his voice now colder, sharper. "You're a nobody. You think anyone's going to believe you over me?" Noah stepped closer, unfazed. "I've already made copies. I sent them to my lawyer and to Caroline's. You can't bury this. It's over." Evan's eyes narrowed to slits. His voice dropped to a hiss. "You don't know what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," Noah said. "I protected a patient. I protected her." Evan stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. "This isn't over." "No," Noah agreed. "It's just beginning." As Evan stormed out, the board members remained stunned, murmuring to each other in disbelief. Noah turned and walked out without another word, adrenaline still surging through his veins. He'd shown his hand. made an enemy of a powerful man. But as he descended the stairwell back toward ICU, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt resolve. Back in Caroline's room, she remained asleep, but peaceful, her chest rising and falling with more strength than before. Noah sat beside her and gently touched her hand. "I bought you time," he whispered. "Now let's get you back." 3 days had passed since the confrontation with Evan Wells. The board had gone quiet, no official statements, no press leaks, just tense silence. But Dr. Noah Mercer knew what silence meant in a place like St. Germain Medical Center. War was coming, and while others circled like sharks behind closed doors, he stayed beside Caroline Wells, determined not to lose the person at the center of it all. Her recovery was slow but visible. The sedatives had been removed from her chart, and her vital signs held strong. Each day, her breathing grew more independent. Her muscle tone improved. Then one morning, her eyelids fluttered open, not for a moment, but for good. Noah was in the room when it happened. He'd been reviewing her progress notes at the foot of the bed when a soft sound made him look up. Her lips moved, barely, a whisper. "Water?" Noah froze, then shot to his feet. "Caroline?" Her eyes, a dark chestnut, focused on him slowly. He reached for the cup on the tray, gently guiding a straw to her lips. She sipped, small, cautious. Then she pulled away, giving the faintest nod. He grinned, relief pouring from his chest like breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You're back." Her voice was hoarse, dry with disuse. "Feels strange." "You've been through a lot," he said gently. 6 months, but you're safe now." She blinked once. The room was quiet but alive with something electric. She stared at him, longer this time. "What's your name?" "Noah. Dr. Noah Mercer. I've been here." She smiled faintly, barely a curve of the lips. "Yeah," she said, raspier than ever. "I remember your voice." Over the next week, Caroline's strength returned in whispers and small movements. Noah became her unofficial translator and advocate, helping her communicate when her voice failed, interpreting the slightest nods or hand squeezes. He'd guide her fingers to signal yes or no, brush her hair back when it tangled, hold her hand when nightmares pulled her eyes wide at 3 a.m. And slowly, what started as duty shifted into something deeper. He told her stories about growing up in Queens, about how his mother worked 2 jobs just to send him to med school, about the time he'd stitched a cut on his own leg in his apartment kitchen after a biking accident, refusing to go to the ER out of stubborn pride. She listened, always watching him with an intensity that rattled him. One night, as the city outside flickered with distant sirens and wind, she whispered, "You talk a lot." He chuckled. "I know. You make it easy." Her eyes warmed. "You stayed." He nodded, his smile soft. "Yeah, I did." Then she asked the question that had haunted him since the beginning. "Why?" Noah sat still for a moment, unsure how much to say. But then he met her gaze, steady and searching. "Because no one else did," he said quietly. "Because they let you lie there like a forgotten file. Because when I changed those bandages and your vitals jumped, I knew someone had tried to keep you quiet. And because I couldn't let them win." Her breath hitched. For a moment, her expression cracked. Pain, shame, vulnerability, before she turned her head away. "I didn't want to wake up," she said. "Not really. Not after what he did." "Evan." She nodded. "He's always hated that I was first, that I built the company. When our parents died, he got the house. I got the pressure. I thought, maybe if I let go, he'd finally be satisfied." Noah reached for her hand, his touch firm but gentle. "Letting go isn't peace, it's silence, and you deserve more than that." Their eyes met again, and this time neither of them looked away. In the days that followed, Caroline began physical therapy. Noah stayed after hours, sometimes just to sit with her, other times to help her take 5 steps instead of 3. When she stumbled, he caught her. When she cried from frustration, he handed her tissues and waited without judgment. He never asked for thanks. But one night, as he adjusted her pillows and helped her into a more comfortable position, she reached for his wrist. "You make me feel alive," she whispered. Noah stilled. "You're the reason I fought back," she added, eyes glossy. "Not for the company, not even for justice, For you." He didn't speak. He couldn't. Instead, he leaned forward, cupped her hand in both of his, and let the silence carry the weight of everything he felt. It wasn't just admiration anymore, not even gratitude. It was something more, something neither of them dared to name just yet. But it was there, in the way her hand lingered in his, in the quiet smile they shared beneath the hum of hospital lights, and in the unspoken truth that sometimes love doesn't shout. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a whisper of water, a steady heartbeat, and a doctor who simply refused to walk away. By the time Carolyn Wells was strong enough to sit up without help, the media had already found her. Photos of her being wheeled out of St. Germain Medical Center with Dr. Noah Mercer by her side spread like wildfire. At first, the headlines were tame. Tech Titan awakens. Billionaire survivor reclaims life. But it didn't take long for curiosity to twist into scrutiny. Soon the narrative shifted. Is Caroline Wells slumming it with her doctor? From ICU to I do? Hospital romance or hero complex? The tabloids loved it. The public had opinions. And Noah, he read every one of them, alone in silence, late at night when Caroline had fallen asleep after another long session with her physical therapist. She was improving rapidly. Her speech had returned almost completely, her gait slowly growing steadier with the help of a cane. Noah stayed by her side through it all, not as a physician anymore, but as something closer, something harder to define. But as her health climbed, so did his doubts. They moved into her penthouse temporarily, her suggestion, not his. It had wide hallways, elevators, a physical therapy space, and round-the-clock care. But Noah had never stepped foot in a place like it before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Boston skyline. The bathroom was larger than his entire apartment. The fridge stocked itself. He felt like an intruder in a life that didn't belong to him, and the whispers didn't help. One night after an exhausting rehab session, Noah scrolled through the latest headlines on his phone. One comment caught his eye. Guy probably latched onto her for the money. Hope she wakes up to reality soon. He set the phone down, jaw tight. Caroline entered the room, barefoot, hair loose, wearing one of the oversized sweaters she loved. She looked relaxed, but her eyes were sharp. She noticed the tension in him instantly. "You're quiet tonight," she said, sitting beside him on the couch. "That's not your usual speed." "I'm just tired," he replied, forcing a smile. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. She studied him for a long moment. "You saw something." Noah hesitated, then sighed. "It's not important." "Then why is your jaw clenched?" He rubbed his face. "Because people think you're rescuing me from some mediocre life, that I'm here for what you have, your name, your money." "And are you?" The question came without accusation, but it still hit him like a punch to the chest. He looked at her, wounded. "Of course not. You know that." "I do," she said softly. "But I need you to know that too." He looked away. "Maybe they're right. Maybe you need someone who fits your world, someone who belongs in these hallways. I'm just a guy with student loans and a secondhand car. You're you. And I'm sick of being defined by that," she snapped, not in anger, but heartbreak. "Don't you see? Before you, I was drowning in that world, trapped by it. My brother tried to kill me for it." Her voice shook. "You didn't just save my life, Noah. You reminded me how to want it back." She stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the glittering skyline. "If we let them tell our story, they'll ruin it. But if we tell it, maybe they'll listen." The next morning, Caroline called a press conference. The media gathered like vultures, cameras lined up, reporters buzzing with anticipation. Noah stood backstage, arms crossed, uncertain. Caroline stepped onto the podium wearing a simple black dress and a calm, quiet defiance. "I know what's been said," she began, her voice steady. "I've read the headlines, but let me tell you the truth." She gestured toward Noah, who stood just beyond the curtain. "That man saved my life, not with surgery or secrets, with presence, with belief, with the kind of loyalty you can't buy or manufacture. When everyone else left, he stayed. When my own brother betrayed me, he fought for me." The room hushed. "And yes," she added, her voice softening, I love him. Not despite who he is. Because of it. Gas rippled through the crowd. Flashbulbs exploded. But Caroline didn't flinch. After the press conference, she walked straight into Noah's arms. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. They held each other as the world spun around them, chaos fading to static. It wasn't just about proving the world wrong anymore. It was about proving they were right, together. Spring had returned to Boston. Dogwoods bloomed along the sidewalks, and the scent of rain still clung to the brick alleys in Roxbury. On the corner of Magnolia and Fenner stood a modest two-story brownstone, red brick, ivy crawling along its side, and a hand-painted sign that read, Wells Mercer Community Health Clinic, free care. No questions, just help. Inside, Dr. Noah Mercer adjusted the collar of his hoodie and glanced at the line already forming outside the door. Children clung to their mothers' coats. An elderly man leaned on his walker, and a woman in scrubs clutched a clipboard and a cough. He turned to the front desk, where Caroline Wells sat, hair pulled into a loose ponytail, typing insurance-free intake forms into a refurbished desktop. Gone were the designer heels and CEO schedules. Now she wore sneakers, a soft blue sweater, and a simple smile that said she was exactly where she belonged. They had walked away from everything, the penthouse, the press, the power. After the trial ended and Evan Wells was sentenced to federal prison, Caroline made a decision. She sold off most of her remaining stake in Wells Tech, funneled the majority of her wealth into nonprofit healthcare initiatives, and transferred the rest into a fund sustaining their clinic's operations for years to come. The media had called it reckless. She called it freedom. Their brownstone wasn't flashy. 3 bedrooms, creaky floorboards, and a yard where sunflowers leaned against a crooked fence. But it was theirs, and the clinic below was Noah's dream come true. Every morning they opened the doors to neighbors who had nowhere else to turn. Noah treated sprains, infections, and undiagnosed diabetes. Caroline kept the books, scheduled appointments, and charmed every grumpy donor who walked through their door. In the evenings, they made dinner together, burning rice half the time but laughing through it anyway. Their lives were quieter now, but richer in all the right ways. One Thursday evening, after the last patient had gone and the clinic lights were dimmed, Caroline stepped out onto the porch. The sky was streaked with pink and gold. A breeze tugged at the edge of her scarf. Noah joined her, 2 steaming mugs in hand. He handed one to her and leaned against the railing. "You think we made the right choice?" he asked, voice low. Caroline didn't answer immediately. She looked out over the street, the kids on bikes, the soft chatter from an open window, a teenager helping his grandfather up the steps. Then she turned to him, her expression soft. "Every day I wake up, and I know what we're doing matters. Not just to me, to people who never had a chance before. That's more than I ever had sitting in a skyscraper pretending I was invincible." She slid her fingers into his. "We didn't lose anything, Noah. We found everything." He smiled, tired but content. "Yeah," he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "We did." They stood there as the sun dipped behind the city, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The lights from the clinic still glowed behind them, warm, steady, like a heartbeat. From a stormy hospital room to this porch in Roxbury, their journey had been anything but easy. But every choice, every fight, every act of defiance had brought them to this moment. Not billionaire and doctor, not patient and caregiver. Just 2 people who had walked through fire and come out standing, side by side. And as night settled in, Noah wrapped an arm around Caroline's shoulders. She leaned into him, her breath warm against his chest. Their love wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was built into every heartbeat of the clinic below, every soul they helped, and every quiet promise they kept. To heal, to serve, to never walk away, together. The story of Caroline Wells and Dr. Noah Mercer isn't just a moving love story. It's a powerful reminder of integrity, courage, and the quiet strength of genuine connection in a world that often values status over substance. One of the most important lessons we take from this story is that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Noah risked his career by defying hospital protocol, not for recognition, but because he saw a human being slipping through the cracks. He chose compassion over comfort. In our own lives, we may not face life or death decisions, but we all encounter moments where we must choose between playing it safe or standing up for what's right. Courage often starts small, by speaking up, by showing up, by not turning away. Another powerful message is this: real worth isn't measured in wealth or titles. It's found in how we care for one another. Caroline, a billionaire tech mogul, had everything until she had nothing. And it was in her most vulnerable state that she found what truly mattered. Someone who saw her not as a brand, but as a person. Noah didn't love her for what she had. He fought for her because of who she was, even when she couldn't fight for herself. Lastly, the story reminds us that it's never too late to start over, if we're brave enough to choose what truly matters. Caroline and Noah walked away from luxury and headlines to build something humble but real, a free clinic for the community. Their decision may have seemed foolish to some, but it was the purest expression of love, service, and purpose. In a world that often chases the loudest, fastest, and most glamorous, their story asks us to pause, to remember that a life of meaning isn't built by climbing higher, but by reaching deeper, into compassion, into connection, into the quiet choices that shape who we are. Because in the end, the most powerful thing we can offer this world isn't our status, it's our heart.